Well, hello then, I do hope you're all well, and let us start by welcoming in the weekend by having an absolute giggle, and let's watch a Home Affairs Committee meeting about the work of the Home Office from the 2nd of February of this year, where the evil Home Secretary Priti Patel is absolutely made a complete bell tap out of by our quiet, meekly, softly spoken Diane Abbot about vulnerable people in dinghies, where she wants to push them all out of sea and let them all drowned. Now, I know this is olden, but it's absolutely golden to a point where I must apologise for my constant giggling and laughing at our ever evasive Home Secretary. And also, due to the length of this skewering, I shall bid you farewell from here, and take care and enjoy.
Diane Abbot.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'd like to thank you, Home Secretary, for giving up the time to speak to the committee. You may be aware that President Macron has been quoted today on the Channel crossings issue, and he said in an interview with a French newspaper that the UK economy relies on low-paid, illegal immigrant labour, and I quote now, "The British continue to have a system from the 1980s which manages economic migration through hypocrisy. There is no legal immigration route." And he goes on, "The British must articulate their needs in terms of the economy and reopen a path to legal asylum requests. We are going to step up the pressure." Do you have a response to that, Home Secretary?
So,
All I can say is, they say quiet ones are the worst, and clearly Diane Abbott is somebody not to be messed around with, but what we'll say is, if you struggle to hear her at times, it's nothing I can do, unfortunately, but enjoy.
well, first response is, first and foremost, we speak to our French counterparts all the time on illegal migration, channel crossings, which clearly is a very, very significant problem. And at the same time, alongside our wider work, and the French government are fully briefed on the work that the British government is doing, the National Anti-Borders Bill, the investments that we put in France in terms of protection, working with their surveillance teams, and also working with intelligence cells and policing. But Macron's comments are wrong. They're absolutely wrong. So let me be very, very clear about that. And alongside that, I should also say that the French government, the entire French government, both the Interior Minister and President Macron, are fully aware through the very good work, actually, that our ambassador in Paris and her team does, in terms of, number one, the cooperation that we have to have with France to combat the dangerous and unnecessary crossings, dealing with illegal migration, but also working with like-minded partners across Europe. So those comments are they're just wrong.
Thank you very
Well, obviously, of course I've got to be wrong. See, the thing is, you listen to Tim Lawton at the end, what are you getting involved for? Are you supposed to be a part of the committee? Well, no, maybe I might be missing something, but shouldn't you be a little bit more impartial on this? What do you guys think?
very much, Home Secretary. I wanted to ask you a few questions on the role that the Navy is going to play in relation to migrant crossings. How do you envisage that role?
Well, first of all, it's a hybrid role involving both the Ministry of Defence and the Home Office. So there has been a lot of work that's taken place. Clearly, now over just under 2 years in terms of looking at patrols in the Channel, how that could be conducted, but also, importantly, having a deterrent impact and effect in the Channel. Permanent Secretary Matthew may wish to speak about the joint work, because we do have joint work underway right now, both with the MOD, and it is with the MOD, not just the Navy, it is the Department MOD, and with Border Force. Those details are being worked up right now, actually. There's a lot of work taking place, a lot of planning, because effectively we have to look at all sorts of aspects of how we operationalise in the Channel, very much in terms of sending out a clear deterrent impact and message.
You'll be aware that the Minister of the Armed Forces responded to an urgent question about this. I think it was on the 18th of of January. And he said, details of how Defence will deliver and maintain the primacy of cross-channel counter-migration operations are currently being worked through. Are you saying that working through process hasn't been completed yet?
So it's still taking place.
Okay. And just tell me a little bit, do you envisage these naval vessels being involved in interception?
So that work is taking place. I'm not going to comment on operational planning.
Well, the Armed Forces Minister said in the House, he said in terms, the Royal Navy will not be directly involved in the interception of ships. Are you saying he's wrong?
Well, that work is not complete, so it's totally inappropriate. It's inappropriate for me to comment on operational planning in terms of what either the Navy, or actually MOD, not just the Navy and Border Force, will be doing and how they'll be operationalising. Because as both our permanent secretaries know, who are actually working with MOD officials and with military planners, that work is, it's operational, it's sensitive, and quite frankly, it's not for me to comment on the tactics that they'll be using or the approach that they'll be using.
The Defence Minister could comment.
Pardon?
The Defence Minister could comment.
Well, he has
Why
given
are
a
you saying
comment.
you can't comment
Primarily
now?
because that work is not complete, as I've already said.
This was on the 18th of January. On the 26th of January, the Defence Committee took evidence from Vice Admiral Sir Charles Montgomery, KBE, and Commander Tom Sharp, OBE. The Vice Admiral said that in terms of departmental and government responsibilities, he was, and I quote, a little confused, and that it was unclear where strategic and operational responsibility lay. Do you know where strategic and operational responsibility?
Well, first of all, I've already said, and in fact I think I said this in the House a few weeks ago, actually, during oral questions. The Prime Minister has effectively asked for the MOD and the Home Office rightly to come together to look at how both departments can play a critical role in defending our borders from all manner of different threats in relation to small boat crossings, migrant crossings. That work is underway. It's being developed. As I've already said, I'm not going to give operational details. It is right that both our teams, at an operational level, work through all of that. And there is a great deal of work right now taking place across both departments. And my Permanent Secretary and the Permanent Secretary from MOD are also involved in planning and the coordination of that work.
In other words, if I had my own way, I'd order them to push them over there to see them all drowned. But I can't say it here, though.
The Armed Forces Minister was happy to speak about these things, and amongst other things he said, and I'm quoting from him now on the floor of the House, neither the Royal Navy nor the Royal Marines will be engaged in pushback. Is he wrong?
Well, as I've already said, I'll say it again, there is work taking place right now between the two departments. That's planning and that's coordination work in terms of how the two teams will work together. So it's not, that work has not been finalised. It is still underway. So the Minister absolutely gave a view. He gave a view.
So but view, those are facts.
Well, they're not facts. They can't be facts because the work is still underway. That operational work is still underway. So, while I appreciate he was responding to questions in Parliament, whether that was a committee or an urgent question, this is work in progress. So it's wrong to say anything specific with regards to work operationally that is still being planned. That work has not completed yet.
Look at her squirm, and you see Diane Abbot's face, that grin.
I think to have a Secretary of State say one thing and a Minister say another. As I said...
Neither of us are actually doing the operational planning. It is really for the specialists to be working on that.
As I said a few minutes ago, Vice Admiral Sir Charles Montgomery, KBE, said that he was confused about where strategic responsibility and operational responsibility lay. Are you able to clear up the confusion?
Well, there is no confusion because our two teams, and I think the British public will be reassured by this actually, they'd rightly want to know that two government departments are coming together to recognise that there is a major problem with illegal migration in the Channel and that we are working together to resolve this and find operational means where we can actually defend our borders from a manner of all different threats in the right and proper way. And it's right that both our teams are given the time and space to actually undertake that work, look at operational primacy, look at the two roles of the roles of the two departments, look at where responsibilities lie, look at the planning expertise, look at the coordination and delivery of assets, and actually work through proper plans. I don't think that's too much to ask of two government departments when it comes to actually trying to protect our borders.
Well, I'm sorry that you can't clear up the Vice Admiral's confusion, but when the confusion has been cleared up, would you be able to publish the details of strategic responsibility and operational responsibility so that Parliament can review and scrutinise it?
Well, I think first of all, it's actually for the two departments. We don't, in the same way that we wouldn't publish strategic operating plans for the Royal Navy, I can't see us doing that for operations in the Channel as well. That would actually go against the grain of trying to protect our borders and having deterrence at sea. But quite frankly, it is right that we work through all the, as I've already said, delivery of assets, planning, coordination, and the two departments, the two specialist teams, these are very, very senior specialist teams with the type of expertise that we simply do not have as members of Parliament. They are operational teams, they are professional teams. They just need to just be allowed to get on and do the plans and therefore, work through the tactics and the strategies that they are going to be deploying.
I don't want to prolong this line of questioning, Chair, but it's extraordinary that the Armed Forces Minister can be clear on these matters, but you cannot. But to move on...
Just before you do, Diane, Sorry, can I just be clear, because of what's been said? Home Secretary, are you saying that the Armed Forces Minister was wrong in what he said? Has he misled Parliament?
No, he hasn't misled Parliament. He was responding to an urgent question before the two teams had actually come together to do the operational planning.
He was wrong in what he said because it hadn't been decided?
Well, at that stage, in terms of the timing, he has absolutely not misled anybody. The timings of the UQ, he was responding. He came to Parliament at a time when literally the commissions have just been stood up. So it does take time. As with all operations, it takes time to work through the details. So on that basis, neither of us, and I say this because it's officials, quite frankly, and it's right that it's officials, it's right that it's the experts, whether it's from maritime safety, from the Border Force, also from the MOD.
I just want to be clear what you're saying about what your colleague, your government minister said. Was that correct in what he said to the House?
But what he said, I've got to first of all say you're providing selective quotes. If you want to go through the entirety of what he said, he also basically made it quite clear in that UQ that much of this work was being developed and underway. And
in other words, he was mischaracterised. Yes, that illness seems to be very catching in this government because Dizzy Lizzie suffers with it over the last few weeks, hasn't she?
And I'm absolutely saying that is exactly, he didn't mislead anyone because that is effectively what has been happening. That work is underway. It is not complete at all.
He didn't mislead us in saying that, and I'm quoting, the Royal Navy will not be directly involved in the interception of ships. He didn't mislead us.
Well, he also went on to say details of how Defence will deliver and maintain the primacy of the Channel to counter migration operations are currently being worked. So that's the point.
I have to tell
you can selectively quote him, but also there are other quotes there where he made it very clear to Parliament that this is work in progress and that work is underway.
I was actually in the chamber for that UQ, and I have to tell you, Home Secretary, that my colleagues were not overwhelmed by the vagueness about things being worked through. But what he
because
did...
he can't be specific. It's operational work that's taking place. You will not expect a minister to come to Parliament and disclose effectively military primacy at sea and what operational plans would be.
Move on. The Commander Sharp, in giving evidence to the Defence Committee, accepted that if the military get this operation wrong, there's a real danger of their presence encouraging, as opposed to deterring, people to make the journey across the Channel to England. Do you agree with that?
Well, first of all, I don't. I absolutely do not, because I have confidence in the expertise of our teams that are working through operational details. I think actually it is incredibly irresponsible for any speculation around this area. None of us sitting in this room are expert planners in terms of how to operationalise at sea. It is right that the government comes together, as the Prime Minister has pulled together two departments to look at this strategically.
She's gone awfully defensive, hasn't she, now? None of us in this room, you know. Oh dear, I've never laughed so much. Sorry for the laughing.
The responsibility of one department. This is a whole of government effort, and therefore it is right that we bring in the specialists, we bring in the expertise, we bring in people that actually understand the dynamics at sea to actually do the operational planning and work. And quite frankly, I think that's exactly what the British public want to see.
Thank you, Home Secretary. But are you saying that Commander Sharp, not to mention your fellow Minister James Heapy, were being irresponsible?
Nobody's being irresponsible. I think actually the comment is anyone that's making speculation around actions should clearly recognise the work that is underway, particularly with the Ministry of Defence, where they have the expertise, and they should be left to get on and do that work rather than just speculating on outcomes that are completely not decided.
Finally,
question,
yes,
Diane,
of course,
thank you.
Chair. The Home Secretary, you'll be aware that in 2019, HMS Mersey and HMS Enterprise were deployed in the Channel. They did not intercept any small boats while on patrol for several weeks. Why do you think it's going to be different this time? Well,
that's very much for the operational teams to work through that. Again, I'm not going to give a running commentary on operations that are still being developed and tactics that are being developed. And I think it's fair to say, Matthew and the team have been leading this work actually with MOD. We have, and it's right that we leave it in the hands of the experts to actually run through not just primacy, the operational work that's required, because the Prime Minister could not have been clearer that this work, by pulling together two departments, is also about defending our borders,
thank you.
as well as making sure that we can save lives.